Chapter 1. The Fractured Accord. Her screams echoed through the Galactic comms network, a little human girl, no more than 6 Earth cycles old, begging for her mother in a voice that cracked like shattering glass. Zarneth Vile's tendrils froze mid-motion as he listened to the recording, the sound playing on a loop in the tense, dimly lit council chamber aboard the diplomatic cruiser Ethereal Resolve. As a Xenari observer, he had attended countless negotiations between warring species, but never before had he heard anything like this. The fragile, terrified cries of the human child made even his usually placid race's empathy surge painfully. Around him, the representatives of the Terran Federation sat rigid, their pale faces drawn in tightly controlled rage. Across the table, the Kreviin delegation lounged with an infuriating air of indifference. "She is unharmed," rasped Commander Hroxa, the lead Kreviin negotiator, his mandibles clicking in a pattern of mock reassurance. His hulking insectoid frame dwarfed even the largest human in the room. "But she will remain so only if you comply with our demands." Demands. Zarneth suppressed a shudder of disgust. Humanity had seen many enemies in its short span as a star-faring race, but the Kreviin Hegemony ranked among the most ruthless. They called it territorial reclamation. The humans called it extortion. Either way, the Kreviin had staked their claim to a region of space rich in resources, including Proxima 4, a bustling Terran colony. And now they had abducted a child from that colony to force humanity's compliance. A shaky voice broke the silence. "You're using a 6-year-old girl as leverage?" The speaker was Admiral Noah Grant, his knuckles white as they gripped the edge of the table. "What kind of monsters are you?" Hroxa's mandibles twitched in what might have been amusement. "The kind who will stop at nothing to reclaim what is ours. You humans cling to our ancestral lands like parasites. Relinquish Proxima 4, or the child will perish. It is a simple equation." Zarneth, seated at the edge of the room, noted the barely contained fury radiating from the human delegation. Humans were often impulsive, quick to anger, and this scenario seemed engineered to provoke them. Still, there was something about their determination that intrigued him. A spark of unpredictable ferocity. Even now, he could see it building. Before Admiral Grant could respond, a figure at the far end of the table stood. Captain Aria Cross, commanding officer of the Terran flagship Resolute, fixed Hroxa with an icy glare. Her presence was magnetic, her voice calm but deadly as she spoke. "You've made your point, but understand this. You've made an enemy of every human in the galaxy. You think you can outlast us? Intimidate us? You have no idea what you've just unleashed." Hroxa laughed, a low, chittering sound that grated on Zarneth's nerves. "Your bluster is meaningless, Captain. You will relinquish the territory or the child dies. You have 72 Earth hours to comply. This discussion is over." The Kreviin rose in unison, their exoskeletal forms clicking against the floor as they exited the chamber, leaving a suffocating silence in their wake. When the door closed, Captain Cross slammed her hand on the table, causing Zarneth to flinch. "That child's screams will haunt me until she's safe," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "We need to act now." Admiral Grant shook his head. "We can't afford rash action. Proxima 4 is strategically vital. If we lose it, we lose access to—" "Strategic value?" Cross interrupted, her voice rising. "That's a little girl, Admiral. They're holding her hostage, and you're talking about strategic value? What's the point of territory if we abandon our people to monsters like them?" The room descended into chaos as voices argued over military readiness, potential casualties, and the galactic implications of open war with the Kreviin. In the midst of the shouting, Zarneth's voice, soft but firm, cut through. "Your rage is understandable," he said, his Xenari vocal cords creating a low, harmonic hum. "But you must understand what you are up against. The Kreviin are formidable. They expect you to cave to their demands. They believe they hold all the power." "They're wrong," Cross snapped. Her piercing blue eyes turned to Zarnith. You've studied us for years. You've seen what we're capable of when we're pushed too far. Do you think we'll let them get away with this? Zarnith hesitated. He had seen what humanity was capable of in desperation, and it frightened him, but it also awed him. No, he admitted, I do not think you will let this go. As the council disbanded, Zarnith lingered, his mind a whirl of conflicting emotions. He had come to observe humanity's diplomacy, to learn from their ingenuity and resilience. But now he feared he was about to witness something far darker. In the quiet of his quarters aboard the ethereal Resolve, Zarnith played the child's cries one last time, the haunting sound etched into his consciousness. And in that moment he understood. Humanity would not stop, not until the girl was safe, not until their enemies were destroyed. Chapter 2. Unleashing the Iron Fist. The war room aboard the Resolute buzzed with frenetic energy as the Terran fleet scrambled to respond to the crisis. Maps of space sectors flickered across holographic displays, tactical overlays highlighting every known Kreviin patrol route, base, and shipyard. Officers moved with grim purpose, their faces taut as they traded intel and issued orders. The air was heavy with the tension of an impending storm. Zarnith Vile stood near the edge of the room, his elongated limbs folded as he observed the humans at work. Their movements were sharp, efficient, but beneath the surface he sensed something deeper, a relentless, all-consuming need to fight back. He had heard humanity referred to as fragile by some of the galaxy's older species. Fragile. How wrong they were. Standing at the heart of it all was Captain Aria Cross. Her voice carried above the din, issuing commands with a tone that brooked no argument. "Patch me through to Admiral Grant," she ordered. "We need clearance for immediate pursuit." "Ma'am?" a young communications officer replied, his voice tinged with hesitance. "The Admiral wants to deliberate with the Council first. He believes escalation without authorization could have serious repercussions." Aria's expression hardened. She didn't raise her voice, but the intensity in her eyes made the officer straighten in his seat. "The Kreviin gave us 72 hours. How much of that time are we supposed to waste debating? Get me the Admiral, now." Zarnith approached cautiously. "Captain," he said, his harmonic voice drawing her attention, "you cannot allow your anger to dictate your actions. Rash decisions have cost many commanders dearly." Her gaze snapped to him, fierce and unyielding. "This isn't anger, it's necessity." She gestured to the tactical map. "The Kreviin don't care about diplomatic repercussions, and neither do I. That little girl doesn't have time for us to sit around playing politics." Zarnith inclined his head, his translucent eyes studying her. "And yet, in your haste, you may risk more lives than you save. Is this not worth considering?" Before Aria could respond, the comm station lit up, and Admiral Grant's image appeared on the main display. "Captain Cross," he began, his tone firm but weary, "you're requesting clearance for full pursuit, but the Council hasn't authorized—" "With respect, Admiral," Aria interrupted, "this isn't a request. We know where they are. Every moment we hesitate is a moment they could use to harm the girl or slip away entirely." Grant's expression tightened. "You're overstepping your authority, Captain." "Maybe I am," she said, her voice low but forceful. "But you know as well as I do that we can't negotiate with them. We've run the projections. If we let them take Proxima 4, they'll push deeper into our territory. They'll take more hostages, demand more concessions. This is the line we cannot let them cross." Grant was silent for a long moment, his eyes scanning the tactical map. Finally, he sighed. "You have clearance, but be warned, if this escalates into full-scale war, the blood will be on your hands." "Understood," Aria replied, her tone cold. As the comlink ended, she turned to the gathered officers. "You heard the Admiral. We're greenlit for pursuit. Bring the fleet to Condition 1. Tactical. Give me an updated position on the Kreviin warship." A young lieutenant with sharp features and a cybernetic interface tapped rapidly on her console. "Latest scans place the Kreviin ship near the Talthar Nebula, It's an uninhabited sector with heavy ion interference, perfect for hiding a ship of their size. "Then that's where we're going," Aria said. "Prepare for a rapid jump. I want strike teams briefed and ready to deploy as soon as we arrive." Zarneth's tendrils quivered with unease. "You intend to engage them directly? Their ship will be heavily fortified, and the nebula's interference will make targeting systems unreliable. A frontal assault may be unwise." "We don't have a choice," Aria replied. "The longer we wait, the harder it will be to extract the girl. We'll have to adapt as we go." She strode to the center of the room, her presence commanding every eye in the space. "We've been pushed around by the Kreviin long enough. Today we take a stand. Dismissed." The Resolute emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Talthar Nebula, its sleek hull glinting against the swirling clouds of charged particles. The rest of the Terran fleet followed in staggered formation, their weapons bristling with latent energy. On the bridge, Aria stood at the forefront, flanked by Zarneth and her senior officers. "Status report," she ordered. "Enemy vessel detected," replied the tactical officer. "Kreviin warship Chaktal, holding position near a derelict mining station inside the nebula. They haven't spotted us yet." "Good," Aria said. "Launch reconnaissance drones. I want a full scan of their defenses." As the drones zipped into the nebula, Zarneth watched the captain closely. Her determination was palpable, but so was the weight of her responsibility. If this operation failed, it wouldn't just be the child who suffered. The entire fleet could face annihilation. The drones returned minutes later, their scans revealing a detailed layout of the Kreviin ship. Its hull was bristling with plasma turrets and shield generators, and it was flanked by two smaller escort ships. "They're dug in," the tactical officer said grimly. "We'll have to punch through heavy defenses to reach them." "Then we punch," Aria replied. "Target their escorts first. I want them isolated before we move on the main vessel." The fleet moved into position, their engines humming with barely contained power. As the Resolute led the charge, Zarneth braced himself, his elongated fingers gripping the edge of the console. He had seen humans fight before, but never like this. The first volley of plasma fire erupted as the Terran fleet engaged the Kreviin escorts. The smaller ships were fast and agile, but the humans' superior coordination quickly overwhelmed them. The Resolute unleashed a barrage of kinetic rounds, tearing through one escort ship's hull in a spectacular explosion. Zarneth watched in awe as the humans adapted to the chaos of battle with uncanny precision. When the second escort ship attempted to flank them, a squadron of Terran fighters intercepted it, their lasers carving through its defenses. "They fight like predators," Zarneth murmured, his voice barely audible. Aria, hearing him, glanced his way. "We fight to survive." With the escorts eliminated, the fleet turned its full attention to the Chaktal. The Kreviin warship fired back with devastating force, its plasma turrets lighting up the nebula like miniature suns. The Resolute took several hits, its shields flaring as they absorbed the impact. "Shields at 70%, the tactical officer called out. "Maintain formation," Aria ordered. "Focus all fire on their shield generators." As the human fleet concentrated their fire, a daring plan began to take shape. Aboard the Resolute, a strike team prepared for a high-risk boarding operation. Led by Lieutenant Marcus Hale, the team consisted of elite commandos trained for deep space infiltration. "Lieutenant Hale," Aria said, addressing the team through the comms, "your mission is to locate and extract the hostage. We'll keep their defenses occupied, but you'll be on your own once inside. Failure is not an option." "Understood, Captain," Hale replied, his voice steady despite the stakes. The team's stealth shuttle launched from the Resolute, slipping through the chaos of battle toward the Kreviin warship. On the bridge, Zarneth watched its progress with bated breath. "They'll never make it," he muttered, his usual composure slipping. "They'll make it," Aria said, her tone firm. As the shuttle docked with the Kreviin ship, the battle outside raged on. The Resolute sustained heavy damage, but the humans refused to retreat. Zarneth marveled at their resilience, even as the odds seemed stacked against them. Inside the Kreviin warship, Hale and his team moved with practiced precision, their weapons ready as they navigated the labyrinthine corridors. The air was thick with tension, every corner potentially hiding an ambush. "This is Hale," the lieutenant reported over the comms. "We've located the child. Engaging hostiles now." Zarneth felt a surge of relief, tempered by the knowledge that the hardest part was yet to come. Back on the Resolute, Aria's voice rang out over the bridge. "All units, focus fire on their engines. We're not letting them escape." As the fleet unleashed a coordinated assault, the Kreviin warship began to falter. Its shields flickered, and its engines sputtered under the relentless barrage. "We're running out of time," Zarneth said, his voice tinged with urgency. Aria nodded. "Hale, what's your status?" Chapter 3. The Relentless Storm. Inside the Chaktal, the atmosphere was oppressive. Dim emergency lighting flickered along the corridors, and the air was thick with the acrid tang of burnt circuitry. Lieutenant Marcus Hale signaled his team to halt, his hand raised in a clenched fist. They crouched low, their rifles trained on the intersection ahead. The Kreviin warship groaned under the strain of the Terran fleet's bombardment, the deck plates trembling beneath their boots. "We're close," Hale whispered, his voice low but steady over the comms. His helmet's HUD displayed a map of the ship's layout, the hostage's location marked with a red dot just a few corridors away. Eyes sharp. They'll be ready for us. Behind him, Corporal Jenna Ruiz scanned the area with her motion tracker. "Picking up movement," she said, her voice barely audible. 5 signatures, closing fast." Hale nodded. "Ambush? Flank positions. Let's give them a surprise of our own." The team melted into the shadows, positioning themselves behind the jagged remains of what had once been a reinforced bulkhead. Moments later, a squad of Kreviin soldiers rounded the corner, their exoskeletal forms glinting in the dim light. The lead soldier barked orders in the Kreviin tongue, unaware of the humans lying in wait. "Now," Hale ordered. The team opened fire, their silenced weapons spitting plasma rounds with lethal precision. The Kreviin barely had time to react before the first wave of fire cut them down. The survivors scrambled for cover, their return fire wild and uncoordinated. "Push forward!" Hale shouted, leading the charge. His plasma rifle hummed as he laid down suppressing fire, forcing the Kreviin into retreat. The humans advanced methodically, clearing the corridor with ruthless efficiency. As the last Kreviin soldier fell, Ruiz checked her scanner again. "Clear for now," she reported. "Good," Hale said. "We don't have time to waste. Let's move." The team pressed onward, their movement swift and silent. The ship's architecture grew more labyrinthine the closer they got to the hostage's location, but Hale's HUD kept them on track. Every step brought them closer to the little girl, and every second counted. On the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Aria Cross watched the battle unfold with grim determination. The Terran fleet was holding its own against the Chaktal, but it was a brutal contest. The Kreviin warship's plasma cannons rained fire on the human vessels, and every hit strained their shields to the breaking point. "Status report!" Aria barked. "Shields at 45%, her tactical officer replied. "Hull breaches on decks 5 and 6, but containment is holding. Enemy shields are fluctuating. They won't last much longer if we keep the pressure on." "Good," Aria said. "Keep up the assault. Focus on their engines and weapon systems. We need to buy Hale's team more time." Beside her, Zarneth Veal stood with his elongated arms crossed, his translucent eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Zainari observer had seen many battles in his time, but the ferocity of this one was unparalleled. Humanity's resilience and resourcefulness continued to astonish him. "You risk much by committing so fully to this engagement," Zarneth said. "If the Kreviin reinforcements arrive, your fleet may not survive." Aria glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "We don't leave our people behind," she said simply. Zarneth tilted his head, his tendrils quivering with a mixture of admiration and unease. A noble sentiment, but at what cost? "Whatever it takes," Aria replied. Deep inside the Chaktal, Hale and his team reached their objective, a sealed door reinforced with Kreviin armor plating. The hostage was inside. His HUD confirmed it. "Ruiz, get that door open," Hale ordered. The corporal moved to the control panel, her hands deftly connecting a hacking device to the Kreviin circuitry. Sparks flew as she worked, bypassing layers of encryption with practiced ease. "Hostiles inbound," another soldier warned, his weapon trained on the corridor behind them. "Hold them off," Hale said. "Ruiz, how long?" 30 seconds, she replied, her voice tense. "Make it 20, Hale said. The team formed a defensive perimeter, their rifles trained on the approaching Kreviin soldiers. The air filled with the crackle of plasma fire as the two sides clashed. Hale fought with the precision of a veteran, his every shot finding its mark. "Doors open!" Ruiz shouted. Hale turned to see the armored door sliding aside, revealing a small, dimly lit chamber. In the center of the room, huddled on the floor, was a little girl. She looked up at them with wide, tear-streaked eyes, her face pale with fear. Hale lowered his weapon and stepped forward, his voice softening as he crouched to her level. "We're here to take you home," he said. The girl shrank back, her small frame trembling. Are you the bad guys?" she whispered, her voice cracking with terror. Hale paused, his heart breaking at the fear in her voice. "No, sweetheart, we're the good guys." Before he could say more, Aria's voice came over the comm. "Hale, do you have her?" "We do," Hale confirmed. "Bring her to me," Aria said. "I'll meet you in the shuttle bay." Back aboard the Resolute, Aria stood at the edge of the shuttle bay as the strike team returned. The heavy doors hissed open, and Hale stepped through, carrying the little girl in his arms. Her small hands clung to his shoulders, her face buried against him. Aria stepped forward, her expression softening. She knelt down to meet the girl's eye level, her voice gentle but firm. "Hey there," Aria said. "You're safe now. No one's going to hurt you. Can you tell me your name?" "Mian." The girl hesitated, her tear-streaked face lifting just enough to meet Aria's gaze. Her voice was barely audible as she whispered, "Emily." "Emily Carter." Aria nodded, a faint smile breaking through her stern demeanor. "That's a beautiful name, Emily. I'm Captain Aria Cross, and I'm here to make sure you get back home to your family." Emily stared at her for a long moment, before finally nodding, her small fingers loosening their grip on Hale. "Thank you," Emily whispered. Aria reached out, her hand gentle as it rested on the girl's shoulder. "You're brave, Emily. Braver than most people I know. So..." The tender moment was cut short as alarms blared across the ship. "Captain," came a voice over the intercom. "Enemy reinforcements inbound. We need you on the bridge." Aria straightened, her expression hardening. "Take her to the medbay," she ordered Hale. "Make sure she's taken care of." "Yes, ma'am," Hale replied, carrying Emily toward the waiting medics. Back on the bridge, Aria's focus shifted entirely to the battle. The Terran fleet had inflicted devastating damage on the Chaktal, but now new Kreviin ships were appearing on the tactical display. "Reinforcements incoming," the tactical officer reported. 2 heavy cruisers, ETA 5 minutes. "Damn it," Aria muttered. She turned to Zarneth. "We need to finish this now. Zarneth tilted his head, his translucent eyes reflecting the chaos of the battlefield. "Do you have a plan, Captain?" "Always," Aria said grimly. She issued a rapid series of orders, coordinating the fleet into a final, all-out assault. The Resolute led the charge, its weapons tearing into the Chaktal's already crippled hull. Explosions rippled across the enemy ship as its core destabilized, and moments later, it erupted in a blinding fireball. Cheers erupted across the bridge, but Aria remained focused. "Reinforcements?" she asked. "They're retreating," the tactical officer reported. "Looks like they weren't prepared for this level of resistance." Aria allowed herself a small sigh of relief. "Good. Let's secure the area and prepare for extraction. We've done enough damage for one day." As the wreckage of the Chaktal drifted into the void, Zarneth watched humanity's triumph with a mixture of awe and trepidation. "Captain," he said, his voice thoughtful, "your people have shown remarkable resolve. You do not fight merely to win. You fight to protect, to endure." Aria turned to him, her gaze steady. "That's what makes us human." Zarneth tilted his head, his tendrils quivering. "Indeed, and it is why the galaxy should take heed." Aria's eyes hardened. Let them. We're ready. Chapter 4, Retribution and Ruin. The Resolute hung in the void like a steel predator, its once pristine hull marred by battle scars. The Terran fleet floated in tight formation nearby, their battered ships running diagnostics and conducting emergency repairs. Despite their victories against the Choctaw and its reinforcements, Captain Aria Cross knew the fight wasn't over. Humanity's message had been sent, but she doubted the Kreviin Hegemony would let the destruction of one of their flagship war vessels go unanswered. In the med bay, 6-year-old Emily Carter lay on a cot, her tear-streaked face calm now as a medic checked her vitals. Her once wild eyes showed the faint flicker of relief, though shadows of fear lingered. Aria stood at the doorway, watching the little girl with an expression that softened her usually stern demeanor. "How is she?" Aria asked the attending medic. "She's stable, Captain," the medic replied. "Some bruises, dehydration, and stress, but nothing lasting." Emily's gaze turned toward Aria, her small voice breaking the quiet. You're the captain, right?" "That's right," Aria said, stepping closer. She crouched to meet the girl's eye level. "Do you remember what I told you, Emily? You're safe now. You're going home." Emily nodded, but hesitated. "The bad guys? Are they gone?" Aria's jaw tightened. "The ones who took you won't hurt anyone again, but there are still others out there. We're going to stop them too." The girl nodded again, clutching the edges of her blanket. "Thank you," she whispered. Aria placed a gentle hand on Emily's shoulder. "You don't need to thank me. You're one of us, and we protect our own." She straightened and gave the medic a firm nod before leaving the med bay. As the doors slid shut behind her, Aria's composure hardened once more. There was still work to be done. The Resolute's war room buzzed with activity as officers reviewed intelligence gathered during the battle. Tactical displays showed the wreckage of the Choctaw, its debris field stretching across a wide swath of the Talthar Nebula. The room grew silent as Aria entered, her commanding presence commanding immediate attention. "Status," she ordered. Commander Ethan Royce, her second-in-command, stepped forward. "Fleet-wide diagnostics are 80% complete. Most of our ships are operational, but the Ajax and Vanguard have sustained heavy damage and won't be combat-ready for at least 12 hours. Enemy reinforcements retreated, but long-range scans indicate increased Kreviin activity in nearby sectors." "What about the data Hale's team pulled from the Choctaw?" Aria asked. Royce gestured to a nearby console. "It's still being decrypted, but preliminary analysis suggests the Kreviin were using the Choctaw as a mobile command center. They've likely been coordinating operations against us from there for months." Aria's eyes narrowed. "Anything about other hostages or targets?" "Not yet," Royce said, "but the intel team is working around the clock. We'll have answers soon." Aria nodded, her mind racing. The destruction of the Choctaw had dealt a significant blow to the Krevian's operations, but it was only a matter of time before they retaliated. Humanity's survival depended on staying one step ahead. "We don't have the luxury of waiting," Aria said, turning to her officers. "Prepare the fleet for immediate redeployment. I want our scouts probing Krevian space for vulnerabilities. If they're gathering for a counterattack, we'll hit them first." In his quarters aboard the Resolute, Zarneth Vile watched the human fleet's movements through a holographic display. The Zenari observer had expected humanity to act with fury after the hostage crisis, but their sustained tenacity surprised even him. For a species that the galaxy once considered fragile, the humans displayed a remarkable capacity for resilience and adaptation. The door chimed, breaking Zarneth's thoughts. "Enter!" he called, his harmonic voice reverberating softly. Captain Aria Cross stepped into the room, her expression guarded. "Zarneth, I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all," he replied, gesturing for her to sit. "I imagine you have much on your mind." Aria crossed her arms, declining the seat. "We're preparing for a preemptive strike. I need to know what you think the Krevian will do next." Zarneth tilted his head, his translucent eyes narrowing. "The Krevian are a proud species. They do not take humiliation lightly. The destruction of the Choctaw and the rescue of the child will provoke them into a decisive response. Aria's lips pressed into a thin line. Then we'll have to make our next move count. They think they can intimidate us, but they don't understand what they've unleashed. I have seen what you humans are capable of when pushed to the brink, Zarneth said. It is both your greatest strength and your greatest danger. Be careful, Captain. Rage is a powerful fuel, but it can consume you if left unchecked. I don't have time for philosophy, Zarneth, Aria said, her voice firm. We're fighting for survival. Then may your choices be wise, Zarneth replied, his tone neutral. Hours later, the fleet gathered at the edge of Krevian-controlled space. Reconnaissance had uncovered a staging area, a fortified asteroid base housing a Krevian battle group preparing to strike back. Aria knew this was their chance to disrupt the enemy's momentum and secure a tactical advantage. The Resolute led the charge, its sleek hull cutting through the void like a blade. Behind it, the Terran fleet moved in coordinated formation, their weapons primed for battle. On the bridge, Aria stood at the helm, her eyes locked on the tactical display. Tactical, give me a rundown, Aria ordered. Enemy forces consist of 3 cruisers, a dozen fighter wings, and a heavily fortified base, the tactical officer replied. Their defenses include automated turrets and minefields. It won't be an easy fight. Good, Aria said. I like a challenge. Begin the assault. Target their cruisers first. We'll deal with the base once their support is neutralized. The battle erupted in a storm of firepower. The Resolute unleashed a barrage of plasma rounds, its weapons tearing into the nearest Krevian cruiser. Human fighters weaved through the chaos, engaging enemy wings in fierce dogfights. Explosions lit up the void as ships on both sides fell. On the bridge, Aria barked orders with precision, her mind calculating every move. Focus fire on their command ship. We take it down, the rest will fall into disarray. The Resolute pressed forward, its weapons hammering the Krevian command ship. Despite their superior technology, the Krevians struggled to match the humans' relentless aggression. Inside the Krevian asteroid base, alarms blared as the Terran fleet breached the outer defenses. Krevian soldiers scrambled to man their positions, but the humans' ferocity was overwhelming. Aboard the Resolute, Aria monitored the assault with cold determination. Captain, Royce said, his voice tense, our sensors are picking up a spike in energy readings from the base. They're powering up a massive weapon, some kind of orbital cannon. Aria's eyes narrowed. Target it immediately. We can't let them fire. The fleet redirected its firepower toward the asteroid, hammering its defenses with relentless precision. The cannon's energy buildup slowed, but it wasn't enough. We need boots on the ground, Aria said. Prep a strike team. I'll lead it myself. Captain, Royce protested, your place is here. My place is wherever I'm needed, Aria snapped. You have the bridge. Don't let me down. The strike team deployed in a hail of gunfire, blasting through the asteroid base's defenses with brutal efficiency. Aria led the charge, her plasma rifle blazing as she cut down Krevian soldiers. The halls of the base echoed with the sounds of combat as the humans fought their way toward the cannon's control room. Zarneth, watching from the Resolute, couldn't help but feel a strange mix of admiration and unease. Humanity's capacity for destruction was unparalleled, but so was their capacity for sacrifice. In the control room, Aria and her team breached the final door. The Krevian engineers inside turned in surprise, their mandibles clicking in panic. "Shut it down!" Aria ordered, her rifle trained on the lead engineer. The Krevian hesitated, their insectoid eyes darting toward the console. Aria didn't wait. She fired a warning shot that scorched the wall beside them. "Now!" Under her watchful eye, the engineers deactivated the cannon, its energy readings dropping to 0. "Good," Aria said. "Now get out of my sight." The Krevian fled, leaving the humans in control of the room. As the Terran fleet regrouped, the asteroid base detonated in a series of controlled explosions. The humans had achieved total victory, the Krevian forces scattered and broken. Back on the Resolute, Aria stood on the bridge, her expression unreadable as she surveyed the aftermath. The cost had been high, but humanity had once again proven its resilience. "You've won the battle," Zarneth said, his voice thoughtful, "but I wonder, at what cost to your soul?" Aria didn't answer immediately. Her gaze remained fixed on the stars. "We don't fight because we want to. We fight because we have to. And if that means doing whatever it takes, then so be it." Zarneth inclined his head. "Then I wish your species the strength to endure. You will need it." As the Resolute turned toward home, carrying Emily Carter and the survivors of the battle, Aria allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. The war was far from over, but humanity had shown the galaxy that they would not be underestimated, and Aria Cross intended to make sure they never were again.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, please consider liking and subscribing.